I'm going to make a stand for my iPad. It's been through a lot of adventures with us, but it sits in the kitchen, and it's been on a kind of a wobbly stand for a while. I thought, hey, why don't I finally make a deserving support for that thing? And so that's the goal for today. I'm going to sit down. So I made a few sketches. I started thinking a real solid type of thing, like with a backrest that would come up all the way through, and I would glue a block on the front of that backrest and on the back of it. And then I don't know, I was trying to just keep working on the idea to try to boil it down to probably one of the simplest ways to get something really nice. So that's basically the goal. The least amount of work for the best result, right? So this one down here was, again, too many pieces. So I had my backrest, I'd saw the angle, and then I'd put a little filler piece, and then glue another piece on the front, and the iPad would sit in here, of course, and it just needs to be caught a little bit on the lip there. Then it has a back, a lower bottom, and then a little glue block in there to support it at that angle. And finally, after messing around with all these, here's another version where I have 3 pieces, and I had another glue block in the back. In this case, it's just a butt joint. I was just going to rip all the angles and try to keep it simple. But I realized that the simplest thing to do was actually not to have all these pieces and all these glue and butt joints and all that. But if I could, now we're just looking at the end view here of a piece, the support piece. If I could have a piece and cut a dado at the angle to support the back, fairly deep, and then go a little shallower, and that would be the pocket that my iPad would go in, and it would rest up against. I'm going to just draw this in. This is my backrest. Can you see this? Mm-hmm. That's my backrest. And then this space will be wide enough for the iPad. So it would slip in there, and then it would come up high enough. And this, I did some calculation, would come up high enough to support. So let's say that's the center of gravity of that thing is there. So there's a lot of support there. Now that's not to scale, but that's the idea. So essentially, I just need to cut 2 dados at an angle and then slip that single piece in there. It's 2 pieces, no glue ups, like gluing all these small pieces together at angles. And then once I had those pieces together, I thought, I'll just figure it out after that and shape it however it looks to make sense. I was doing some drawing up here of how maybe to shape it. But that can come. And so I thought we'd start there. Now check this out. This is the way Pug used to do a lot of drawings. Can you see this on the table? This is my drawing of this. I've got the base here. Can you see that all right? Mm-hmm. And anyway, that's my backrest. And then this represents the iPad. And this represents around the center of gravity. So it's back here. And I thought, I started out with a piece about 3.5 inches wide. Now, I had to figure out the angle. So that was pleasing and felt right. So what I did was I held the iPad up, and I just got a little stop on the front. And I tried to lean it back to approximately what felt right. If you were sitting at a table and you had it, would you want it leaning way back? Or, if it goes too far, then you start seeing the lights. You want it kind of at a pleasing recline. And then when I found that, I adjusted my bevel gauge to support it. And there it is. Okay, so that's the angle I figured was nice. And it didn't put a lot of pressure backwards or twisting on the iPad, but it gives it a nice support, that angle. So I took it off, and now I had the degrees here. I didn't really have to know the degrees. I could have set up the saw just to that angle, but I ended up marking and checking, and it was right around 19, so I tweaked it. I made it 20. So if you want to make one of these, it's 20 degrees. Now, I'm going to jump ahead and show you my mock-up. Okay, so this was kind of a mock-up. I used poplar. I wanted to see how it would work out. So I got the recline angle, and I decided to make the back support rest. Again, 3/8 felt a little thin, and 7/16 felt like it was solid, and it wouldn't break. If you drop this in just the right way, maybe it will break, but it's going to be pretty strong. The base is 1 inch thick. Now, I went with that extra little thickness because you can see that dado is pretty deep, and it leaves a little more than a quarter at the bottom. But the way that this backrest fits in there, it fits into that 7/16, and I'll squeeze it in there. Is that right? Yeah. So see, it fits in there, and it's a little bit deeper than the forward trough. So we're going to have that resting in there at the 20-degree angle. And then I moved the fence to cut that front dado and lowered the blade so I wouldn't be quite as deep. That way it gave me that little lip, gives you a really good positive stop. So I'm going to actually glue that in. But that's simple. There's no like gluing something on the front, so you maintain a straight board. So this is close, I think this is about 3 3/8. For now, that was what I was working with. And the back was about 3 1/2. I want to go a little wider than that, but it was sufficient to try it out. So check it out. I'll take my iPad. And it fits right in there really nice. And that's it for tonight. So come on back next time. No, I got more for you. This is the way I often will work out a prototype. Is use some cheap wood. You're kind of feeling your way along, with the angle and everything. And it may be wrong. And I just tweak it. But the more I can kind of imitate or represent what's going on with these little ways of holding things, the more I can kind of dissolve the questions along the way and work my way to a final result that I really like. This is a type of design process. So anyway, I like this. I'm ready now to cut some real wood. Now, what should we use? Well, you could use some, I have so many chunks around. This project doesn't require much. You can see it just has, the base is only as long as the iPad. So it's 9 7/16 long, this one. Of course, if you're going to build one for yours and you had one of the larger iPad Pros or something like that, you might have to extend your base. So, and some of the larger ones are like 12-inch diameter. So the backrest, you might want it a little higher. I know they're a little over 8 inches. I checked on the thicknesses. Well, it went from to 0.29, and now the iPad Pro is 0.24. Now, the reason I'm telling you all that is that your groove for your iPad has to be appropriate for yours. You don't want it really too much play at the bottom there, but if you put about a 30-second more, it'll be perfect. So I did measure mine, and it is just like that. It is 0.34. I actually did check it out with the micrometer. Anyway, I had these chunks hanging around. I thought, man, it would be cool to make it out of wenge. You know how much I love wenge. But I didn't feel like resawing all that today. So I found one of my old favorites. Good old genuine mahogany. And this is a piece that was ripped off of a chunk I had, and it was really, really nice, dense. You can see kind of the ribbon on there. And so I went ahead and I already sized the mahogany for our stand. Check that out. Look at that. Now, the grain was really running diagonally and all that, so that's why I had this big chunk. And grain like that isn't super useful because nobody wants sloping grain on something. But for smaller projects, it's cool. It'll be fine. And then the base I got out of some straighter ribbon cut. Now, this is genuine, so it's actually South American. So the mahogany you get now, African, obviously is from West Africa, and Sipo and all those are African. They're different than this. They have a harder, they're a little harder, and they just don't have the same workable texture. It's very nice, but when you've worked genuine mahogany, you notice the difference. But so it was really wonderful to get back to it. And so what we're going to do is use our prototype as inspiration and take our genuine mahogany and make our stand out of that. All right. So let me figure out what I want to be my front, because I've got that looks nice. I love that ribbon right there. So I want this to recline, and let's see. Let me show it on this side. That's my front, and I'm going to have it come in, and it's going to lay back about like that, okay? So I figured out that the front of my initial trough should be an inch back from the front of this. So let me just get a mark here. All right, there we go. And the angle is going to be, I got to make a little line like that, even though it's not exact, just so I know how to position this, because you could get turned around and have it the wrong way. All right, so that's going to be the front of my trough, and this deeper trough has to be 9/16 deep along the front edge. That's what I'm going to be measuring. I'm going to get it to be 9/16 deep. All right, and then we'll step it up so it's only 3/8 inch deep in front of that, because my iPad has a border around it that's 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to have it drop in there that far. You won't lose any of the screen that way. All right, so let's head over to the table saw and check it out. I've got set in there, I already got it prepped with 7/16 inch thick dado cutter. So I've got my two outside pieces, which always give you a 1/4 inch with the set I have. And then I added a one piece that expands it to another, I added an 1/8 plus a 1/16 cutter, and brings it right out. So I've already tested this into that other groove, so I know this is already a 7/16 groove, and I've got that marked. I went ahead and cut these pieces to length, so these are the same length as my iPad. I should say one other thing. When I designed this first one, and I mentioned earlier I went almost 3.5 wide, I realized I thought I might need that amount back there so it wouldn't be wanting to fall over. I realized I had way more than I needed. So I cut it back to 3 inches. So it's a little cleaner at 3 inches wide, and that's what I ended up going with this piece. So it's 1 inch thick, 3 inches wide, and it's as long as my iPad, 9 7/16. And the vertical piece, I brought it up a little bit to 3 3/4 inch. And of course that is 3 3/4 inch wide, and it's 9 7/16 long, and it's our 7/16 thick. So I had just run that through the planer. I didn't run it through the sander. I brought it over the bench, and I had the groove already there, and I made a few quick skims with the hand plane and fit it. So I got the surface nicely cleaned up on both sides, and it fit like a glove. So I'm ready to cut the groove. All right, so here we go with the first deeper groove. I already got this set up, so you can see there's my mark, and that's going to be the front of my deeper trough for the backrest. We're going to go 9/16 deep to the front of this. And I'm not quite there right now, so I'm going to turn it on. I'll get the dust collector on. We'll get it going, and I'll just keep adjusting and measuring until we get it to where we want it. Okay. All right, so I cranked it up. I got a little over excited there, and I went a little over. I'm almost 5/8, but it doesn't matter. Look, we're still almost 5/16 from the bottom, and that's going to get glued in, so it's still plenty good. And it doesn't hurt for that to be a little bit deeper. Now the other one, I'm going to drop this down so it measures just 3/8 from the front. Now I'm going to move the fence over the thickness of my iPad plus a little bit, maybe just not a 32nd at the most, okay? That should do it. Now I got to drop this down. I want to sneak up on that 3/8. So I'm going to make the mark. I'm going to go ahead and check it out, and I'll run it through when I get the right height. I'll do one pass. Perfect. Here we go. All right, let's see what we got. So isn't that easy? It's like 2 cuts, just setting the depth. Once you get that 7/16 set in there, then that fits right in the groove. It's nice. That'll get glued in nicely. And let's see if our iPad fits. Beautiful. All right. So the back is actually almost perfectly in line with, let's just get the square over. So if you put more of a recline on it than 20 degrees, you'll need a little more. So see where the back is just like a 1/16 less than that. Maybe a little more than a 1/16. So it works out great, nice and stable. All right, so now we've got it in the same position as our mock-up, and now we've got the good wood, and we can dress it up a little bit. It's pretty clunky, very rectilinear and everything, all these sharp corners and lines. Now you could just treat this however you want. You could make facets. You could just make a lot of chamfers and soften up the edges that way. But I was inspired by the Apple design themselves. And have you ever noticed, I'm sure you've noticed, but the way the Apple design is, these corners are very intentional. They're, all of their products have these kind of softened round corners. So a curve never meets a hard line, only like at the edge of the device. You never see like a curve hitting any kind of hard line. And they have a term for that, Apple does, called continuous curvature. So I thought, hey, let's play off that a little bit and address the corners of our base with an Apple feeling to it, and see if we can have fun and make a little bit of continuous curvature to the base. Now, in order to do that, we have to first round our corners this way, and then we'll model them and get round overs that direction. So I thought, well, what kind of radius should we use there? And a lot of times when I was with Bug, we would just look around the room for a radius. Rather than grabbing the compass, we'd look around for a can, a bottle, a lid, a glue bottle, something that had a radius that looked good, and we would use that. So I looked around the room, and I saw the glue bottle. I tried that. But you know what worked the best? This epic woodworking cup.
Shameless Bug.
No, it really did work well. We're not getting rich off these mugs, trust me, but we love getting them in your hand. So if you haven't got a mug and you want one, hey, check them out on our website. So the radius actually works well. So I'm going to go ahead and, let's see. First I want to mark where these meet. I want to put a little line in the back there. So this is going to stay fixed right here. So I'll put that line there. So I'm going to round these over, and if I go all the way down beyond that line, I'm going to have like a hollow space there, and I don't want that. I want to maintain that meeting point. So whatever I round, I want it to end to a sharp edge here and here. And then I can have my round come away from there. And then I'll have it end here, and then so everything will start getting rounded away from this critical point here. And then over here, I'm going to maintain this point here, but everything will be rounded on this front corner and all the way down the front there. So I'll use a router for some, but some, I'm not going to route that. It's kind of tricky. I'm probably going to get blowout there. So I'll just use some rasp in combination. But let's get going. We got to get this done. All right, so here's my front. So I'm going to just use the mug. Actually, I'll do it on the back because this can take the full radius. So I'm going to have, it'll go for the radius, and then there'll be a little straight before where we need to stop. I don't know if you can see that. That's my pencil line. So I'm going to cut the radius, and then I'll feather it by hand right up to that point. All right, so let's get that drawn on there. You can do a smaller radius if you like, but...
yeah, somebody's suggesting why not match the iPad corners.
Yeah, you could do that. But I think when you see this, you might like it. You might see. I just wanted more of that. I wanted more roundedness to my frame, almost to have a, I don't know, sort of a very streamlined contemporary look. All right, so there's my two corners there. Now the base, I need to round this back here. And I'm going to round this front corner just a little bit. I'll just do this by hand. And I'll just shape that after. But let me see, should I? Yeah, that's okay. I'll do that. And then back here, I'm going to round that over, but I want to leave a little flat here So let's see. So when I'm running the radius, I can maintain the round. You'll see what I mean in a second. If I went all the way like that, and then I ran the radius, I would kill that corner. So I got to bring it over, up away from that corner. Let me get a rule. About 7/16 of an inch to be exact, I think, somewhere around there. Get the other end. Okay, now here we go with the mug works again. It's a multi-purpose mug. All right, so there we go. We've got our curved corner there, here, and a little one in the front, and our curve on the top back. So I'm going to head right to the bandsaw, and we'll cut those out. All right, so check it out. Look at what the difference just by doing that. So we've gone from this appearance to this really kind of streamlined. It looks like an Airstream, right? That's basically what we're creating. Whoops, I got it leaning the wrong way. Sorry about that. I was so into that. So from the front, it'll have that. And then from the back, it'll be nicely rounded like that. All right, so I've got the router table set up to cut a little larger radius on the base because it's so thick, and then on the back side of the backrest, so I got to get it on this side, I'm going to radius that with a softer, just like a 3/8 radius. The base is going to be a 3/8 radius, and the one I'm doing on the backrest is, it's like a 5/16. It's a bigger, not quite the whole thing though, okay? So here we go. I'm going to get my gear on. I'm going to turn on the dust collector. And when I'll clamp this one here, and I'll use the handheld. And this one I'm going to do over there. Whoops, I almost forgot. I can't do that quite yet until I clean up that radius. It's just bandsawing right there. So before you can go to radius, you've got to smooth that bandsawing out a bit. And I'll just take the block plane. This is where I just started to remember how wonderful mahogany is. To work, it's such a nice texture. You can understand why the 18th century craftsmen loved it, because you could carve it. It has that, and the color is wonderful, and it finishes so beautifully. So it has so many of the characteristics that are friendly to making fine furniture. So I'm just going to just smooth that up a little bit like that. And then in the front, I'll just do a little bit here.
Peter says you gotta go get to the machines when everybody's let go.
What's that?
Peter says you'll get to the machines when everybody's let go out of the quarantine.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Is that a left-handed Inca bandsaw, Steve is asking?
I always forget whether it does cut on the left, but it's all the Incas, as far as that model, the 10-inch Inca, all the ones I ever saw were just like that. So, yeah, some are on that side, and then the Felder cuts the other way. It'd be, I guess, considered a right hand. And the old Walker Turners that we had at Pug Shop were right hand, but yeah.
Michael's asking how you got that Festool vac hose connected to the DeWalt. He's been trying that, and only duct tape works.
Oh, you can see that in the background, huh? It's just, there's an inner port. It doesn't stay real well, Michael. That's what, yeah, it doesn't stay real well. I only hooked it up there because the mahogany dust can be very fine, and it has gotten to me in the past. So try to be extra careful with this. All right, so that's pretty good. Just that nice little softening. Now it'll take the other really well, and the back piece. I'll just hit that. Just nothing fancy here. We're just kind of feeling our way along, and I'll get this. That's nice. Just faring that curve more smoothly. I won't have as much to clean up later.
Bob's asking about the files. What type do you recommend?
What type? Oh, I'll talk more about that in a minute when we get to the... Now, I'm not going to route I'm going to just do partial because in the interest of time. I have one that's a little further down the road that we'll switch out to in a minute. It's pretty repetitive once we get going. So I'll just do a corner of this one and a corner here, and I'll just work it a little bit. And then we'll go to the one that's further down. All right, here we go. Hit this edge here. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. I guess I'll finish routing this one. So here on the back, while I'm here, I don't think you can see that pencil line, but this is that. Look at how we've approximated kind of that apple thing. Now we got a much larger sweep, but I like that. I want to have it relate, but it doesn't have to be exactly like. But again, if you want to make a smaller one, it almost looks like a zoomed in of the actual. But I'll take this file and just clean up. You can clean off some of that burn. But then in here, where I want to make that transition to the line, I want to just have it come up to the line. So this has a really nice working texture. So I'm just going to use the rougher side of this file. I forget. I think I got this from Woodcraft years ago. I haven't seen these around, but if anybody's seen these, they're not cheap, but they're flat on one side. They've got a more coarse file action here and a fine file, and this is a really great file to come after the Nicholson rasps, which I'll show you in a minute. So this is the finer side right here. So I just want to feather that in and get close to that, and that's good. Now I'm going to blend it out. So it's kind of coming out almost like in a nice little sweep. Now before sanding something like this, I would probably card scrape just to get some of that burn off, and it speeds up the sanding. And right here, I can just lightly detail some of the file marks off, and the sanding goes much faster. Okay, so I would do that to both corners. And then the larger one is very similar, except in this case, we've got this heavier corner. So I would clamp it. I don't usually work on this corner, but it's a nice one to show you. All right, so this is where you can use the Nicholson rasps. I like these Nicholsons. They're pretty widely available. I have the 49 and the 50. There are some Arroyo or something like that. They're French made. But these rasps, what's beautiful about them is the randomness of the cutting teeth. They're not in that straight row like the old rasp I used to play with in the basement when I was a kid. It was very coarse and had straight teeth, and it left a really harsh, it was a carpentry, very coarse type rasp. But these are finer, and because of the randomness of the teeth, you never feel that hard line of resistance, and they feel really wonderful to work and very fast cutting. So if we look in here, I'll take the 49, which is the more coarse, and I'm just going to do some light passes here. What I'm trying to do is continue that curve. I'm just going to continue that molding out to a point right there. So this is like the roughing stage right now. This one will work a little faster. I'll go to the 50. And I want to just blend that and have it be almost seamless the way it goes out there. So I'm feeling a little bit of a bump there. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking that's the line on the back. I actually want to carry this curve right to that point on the corner. So that's good. I can show you how these work a little more aggressively. So I'm just going to eyeball this and have it. So see how nicely these cut? Random. It's fairly smooth, but you have great control. And I'm just hitting it lightly here. Now I'm going to go to the 50. I want to feather it right out to a point. And then I'll come in with the finer one. This is the finer file. That removes, it's just like sandpaper grits, except we're moving through coarseness of files. That was a good deep knee bend there, huh? That start to burn a little?
Giving away my secrets.
Getting a little exercise in. All right, so check that out, how it nicely comes around and ends in the corner. And I've already got it, I don't know if you've seen that, but
So,
that looks really sweet, right? It has that apple look to it. And I've got a little burn there, so you can file a little bit on that. And you can even come down here if you've got any more flats. And then I would card scrape. Nice. Get rid of, again, those file marks. If you get rid of a bunch of them beforehand, it'll be better. Now, in the front corner, I would take the rasp again, this time the 50, and I want to have this round and leave me a point there. So I'm going to blunt it, get that continuous curvature, inspired by, what do they call those engineers who deal with the hardware? I mean, the appearance of the object that's so iconic, and we all relate to that when we see it. But look at how we've changed this up so much already. It's already got a very nice, soft kind of sculpted feeling to it. I haven't really done this much sculpting work like where you're using rasps and chisels. Like a lot of that is with 18th century furniture on the legs of Queen Anne, and I want to do more of that at some point. So much of the craftsman style and the shaker style is so linear, or there's little curves and stuff, but I think I enjoy this more than anything when you're actually shaping something and putting a little personality into it. So there you go. Look at that. We've designed our own little base, and that's how I'd treat that one corner. Get it nicely shaped like that. And then I'd work that curve a little bit. I'd do the same on this end. And then right from this point, I'm just going to show you quickly here how I would take I like using this Orbido because it has that soft spongy pad, and I've only got 220 on there, so it cuts pretty quickly, this mahogany. All right, so here I go. I always finish with hand sanding, so I would get out, I've got a felt block or a block with a piece of cork on it, and I would just go with the 220. So I get that on there. Let's do this. And you'd have to make sure your surfaces are done, and then I tri-fold the paper, and I can really detail those corners because the sander doesn't leave a finished, like you might have some little places and you can soften them really nicely with the 220 pretty quickly on mahogany. Now if you pick some really hardwood, you're going to have to, it won't be quite as friendly as this, but no reason to not try it. All right, so I'll go ahead and really round that up. And obviously I didn't do these, but I want to feather right into that point. I would sand that a little better. But let's just put that in and check it out. Look at that one little corner. Pretty sweet, huh? Now I've already did one. I got it up to this point. Let me bring it over. So the whole thing is done. Same thing. I did a little more sanding. Look at the front edge, nicely rounded. And then our back fits in. Now check that out. See those little transitions? Now I'm going to just leave that, even that's a natural inclusion. I could have filled it, but now I'm going to glue it in. So I'll just put a little glue down there once you get it all sanded up. So check this out. I'm going to get it right down in the corner. So it's going to actually reinforce that. So the fact that I cut deeply on that other one, it's really not going to be compromised. Well, now it's going to fit right in there. I'm going to get that good old rub fit, so I smear it around, and you can feel it grab. Really good connection there. I've got a little glue coming out the back, which I didn't want to do, but so be it. Let me get that off there. Get
Abracadabra,
glue.
Stuart says.
Yeah. All right, so that's resting in there nicely. I was going to shoot some pin nails through the front, but I don't even think I have to. Let me get my little dryer here. So here's a little trick. When I'm in a hurry to do a finish, I'll speed it along by using my heat gun. If I have to dry if I'm doing a little sample board, I want to splash some finish on here. That's why I'm going to do this right now. I don't want the water in there. And I got a little on the front here. So I even lightly broke this edge, but I didn't want to take much off that edge because it's going to be leaning right against the back, and I didn't want it too rounded. I should round this a touch. Okay, I'm going to splash a little finish on there so you can check that out, and we'll be done. But this is mahogany. So what we would often use is we'd use amber shellac or orange shellac for the first coat, and then we would back off, and we would use a filler sometimes that was walnut if we wanted to fill the grain. But I'm just going to, let's get something here. I'll get it up off the table with this. So I've got a mixture here of a little bit of orange shellac, and I cut it with some seal coat. So it's not total heavy-bodied orange, but it does have a lot of amber to it. So let's get that on there.
Wow.
Isn't that sweet? That is gorgeous mahogany. Now this will darken with time, but the amber just warms it up a little bit. It gives you that warmer golden cast. Normally I would spray something like this, but what the heck? It's so small you can brush it on easily. Look at that. It really does feel like an apple corner. All these softened corners. The continuous curvature. Look at that. And we'll go right around. I'll save the bottom for later, but the beauty of this shellac too is that it dries so fast. What?
Michael says, Chris, someday Tom will spring for a smart TV so you don't have to huddle around the iPad. But for now, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to have a big date night tonight. We're on our new iPad.
Stuart's asking, is there a reason for amber as opposed to blonde or garnet?
Well, garnet is a kind of amber, or it's got a little more orangey in it. It's just a really nice warm color. So the blonde is just a lighter, very pale yellow. So you want a little more richness of color. Now, I don't do all the coats. Once I feel like it's got enough, like that's got a nice color, you could go to the natural or the blonde. So let's get our iPad. It's almost dry enough. It won't hurt it. All right, so I'm going to do a slow spin just to show you. Now, the finish would get richer, but we've only got one little. So check out that final result.
Looks great.
Doesn't it relate to that Apple product pretty nicely?
Oh, it's pretty.
Look at that. And it holds it so nicely at a 20-degree angle. There you have it. Thank you so much for hanging out, spending a little time in the shop, and chance to make something creative.